Elton is actually quite upset with Harry for several reasons. I have been told that he actually has asked Elton to give him some money for Invictus. Elton has said no.
Harry may have to spend millions now, millions, because loser typically pays when you lose a lawsuit in the UK. And he, to put it frankly, got his ass handed to him by this.
There's a kind of ending that cuts deeper than any public meltdown ever could, the quiet, almost imperceptible unraveling. It's the type of farewell where calls go unanswered, the usual gestures of care fade away without explanation, and the person who once stood as an unshakable pillar of support slowly drifts into silence. This week, it seems that's exactly the painful distance that has grown between Prince Harry and the one figure who quietly stood beside him since the beginning, Elton John. Their bond wasn't born out of business deals, Hollywood circles, or recent chapters of life in Montecito. It started decades ago, a connection forged in grief and loyalty, long before the spotlight shifted to Meghan or the reinvention of Harry's life overseas. Elton John became part of this story not just as a legendary musician, but as someone who shared an intimate and solemn moment at Westminster Abbey, reshaping one of his greatest songs live for a funeral watched by 2 billion people worldwide. More than that, in the years that followed, Elton wasn't merely a celebrity acquaintance, he grew into something much deeper, a kind of steady, surrogate father figure, offering guidance.
Some people have said he's going really off his rocker. This has been so bad. It's literally the week where nothing went right. It's his worst week in 30 years.
Comfort and a rare kind of reliability to Harry in a world that often felt cold and isolating. But now, according to reports flooding in from London, their decades-long friendship may have reached a breaking point. Elton apparently made it clear to Harry, in his own words, that he isn't a bank. To truly understand how a friendship so deeply rooted and lasting could come to such a crossroads, it's important to look beyond the headlines and some recent tensions. Relationships built over 30 years don't collapse overnight. They fracture because of underlying strains, patterns of strain and disappointment that quietly fester beneath the surface until something finally brings them crashing into the open. Now, what was the spark that ignited this visible chasm? Let's rewind just over a week. 8 days ago, Harry exited a London courtroom, grappling with the fallout of a huge legal defeat, the most significant of his adult life. Every single one of the 97 claims he filed against the Daily Mail's publisher was dismissed. The cost? Legal fees already estimated to soar above £50 million, and Elton John's name is directly linked to that staggering bill because he had stepped in early.
He used to have the Bank of England, and now he's got the Bank of Elton. Harry needs a lot of money for Invictus. The only reason he went to England this summer is to raise funds for Invictus Birmingham 2027. He is £25 million short.
Pledging to help fund this bitter legal battle, right alongside Harry every step of the way. What reportedly unfolded next is the turning point, the moment that shattered what many believed was an unbreakable bond. With that staggering bill still looming over them, Harry didn't just let it sit. He approached Elton again, but this time, it wasn't about the legal expenses. This request was something entirely different, something personal, and according to the reports, it's the crack in the relationship that would eventually widen into a chasm. This is not just a recent headline-grabbing moment. This is a story layered with over 30 years of history, decades of trust, friendship, and shared memories that deserve far more than just a fleeting mention in a viral clip on social media. That's why we need to unpack this carefully, step by step. We will explore how Elton John went from delivering one of his most emotional performances at Princess Diana's funeral, an event watched by millions around the world, to a point where, reportedly, he turned away from her own son. And we will also break down exactly what this legal battle has cost every person caught in the crossfire, financially, emotionally, and publicly. Most importantly, we'll dive into why a simple string of 4 words, uttered quietly but sharply, might become one of the most quietly heartbreaking moments in royal history, perhaps remembered for generations as an unexpectedly crushing blow to a young prince.
You lose the case, but I'm saying that he might have lost Elton John.
Yes.
This, he's apparently, Elton John's told him, this was according to Paula Freilich, I think you interviewed.
Yeah.
I'm not an ATM.
To fully grasp the weight of that rejection, you have to understand one key truth. This was never your run-of-the-mill celebrity friendship. It wasn't built on photo ops or fleeting encounters at glamorous events. Elton John's connection to Diana was deeply personal and genuine, lasting long before the world's eyes fixated on their tragedy. It wasn't just a friendship that conveniently magnified after her death, when cameras started rolling and headlines exploded. Elton's bond with her was real, sustained, and heartfelt. When Diana tragically passed, Elton didn't just offer a quick condolence or a tribute behind closed doors. He rewrote his signature, most beloved song specifically for her. Candle in the Wind was transformed into a heartfelt elegy, performed at her funeral in front of the largest TV audience the world had ever seen at that time. Yet, in the midst of immense public attention and overwhelming grief, Elton somehow held himself together on that stage.
Elton John may be called upon for Harry's legal bills, because the legal bills, and I think we're about to find out in the next week how much he could be up for, could be in the tens of thousands. And that might actually bankrupt him, which would be a disaster, because let's be honest, every venture that these two have been on has been a disaster. I don't know how much money that they're getting. And so Elton, according to Paula, has had enough, because he might be the one that has to bail him out.
His voice steady, his emotions raw but controlled, every note filled with grief and respect. That poignant performance went far beyond words or melody. It raised more than $47 million for Diana's memorial fund, a testament to the power of that moment and the depth of the love behind it. And for nearly 3 decades afterward, Elton never sang that tribute version again, not once. He openly said that song belonged solely to Diana, forever reserved as her musical monument. In the years following Diana's death, Elton wasn't some distant figure sending sporadic holiday cards or brief messages of sympathy. Reports say he remained a constant, nurturing presence in the lives of her 2 young boys, not as a mere family friend on the sidelines, but as someone genuinely woven into the fabric of their childhood and growth. His involvement went far beyond what most might expect, showing a level of devotion and closeness that many had never fully recognized until now. This was a time when Harry desperately needed exactly the kind of steady, unwavering presence that someone like Elton could provide. David Furnish, Elton's husband, once described him in a deeply meaningful legal statement as
he has $4 million from corporates and anonymous donors. He needs $25 million more. And this was supposed to be a big triumphant return. He was going to go glad hand people and really get them to open their wallets. They're not.
Parental figure specifically to Harry. Pause for a moment and really let that idea sink in, because it completely changes how we think about everything that unfolds in their story. This isn't the kind of language you throw around lightly to describe a casual friend or a passing acquaintance. No, this is the kind of expression reserved for a bond forged by trust, care, and the aching void left when someone irreplaceable is gone. It speaks to a nurturing role, someone filling a gap that's emotional and profound. There's one poignant moment from 2007 that reveals the true nature of their connection, long before any of today's headlines or online debates emerged. Back then, Harry was still quite young, still carrying the weight of a grief that had never fully faded or settled. At a memorial concert set up to honor his mother's legacy, Harry asked Elton if he would perform Candle in the Wind once again, the song famously rewritten for Diana and forever connected to her memory. Elton, however, gently declined, not because he didn't want to support Harry, but because he felt the song itself was too fragile, too raw, a piece of history too sacred to be rehashed for public consumption. Instead, he chose to perform Your Song, another powerful but less emotionally charged number, allowing the moment to be tender without reopening old wounds. In this quiet, compassionate act, Elton was already stepping up as the adult in that space, shielding a young man from reliving grief too intensely, rather than showcasing it for the crowd.
Walks into a room and people respond to him and they like him. He used to be fun.
Yeah.
He was a fun guy, but he's turned into an embittered middle-aged man. And he's going to have to be very careful because it bleeds into your everyday work, that you're just hostile.
Harry clearly recognized what this relationship meant to him. He has spoken openly about it in his own writing, revealing an honesty that feels genuine and heartfelt rather than staged or performative. In his memoir, Harry described Elton with a tenderness that shines through every page. "I loved him," he wrote. "I'll always love him." These simple, deeply personal words matter. They offer a clue to just how meaningful this connection was in Harry's life, and why any recent shift feels so impactful. Fast forward to the royal wedding in 2018, where Elton made a memorable appearance. Instantly recognizable by his iconic pink glasses, he stood out in the crowd and surprised everyone by leaping up during the reception to perform Tiny Dancer, a beautiful, spirited moment dedicated to the grandson of the woman he had cared for so deeply for decades. But when public opinion turned sharply against Harry and Meghan in the year that followed, after they stepped back from royal roles, Elton did not turn away or stay silent. Instead, he remained ready to support in the way only someone who truly cares could.
Elton, to be fair, brought Harry into this, introduced Harry to David Sherborne. And then Harry brought in Doreen Lawrence. And I think they really thought they would have this huge, strong claim if like all 7 of them, because there was, of course, Elizabeth Hurley, Sadie Frost, or Simon Hughes as well, if they all were together as a group. 97 freaking complaints made, and they were all tossed out.
No one waited silently or lingered for a carefully crafted statement from a public relations team. Within just a few hours, he stepped forward with his own personal and heartfelt declaration. He expressed a profound and sincere responsibility to protect Harry's family from the very kind of invasive media scrutiny that, in his view, had played a devastating role in the tragic passing of Princess Diana decades ago. This isn't the behavior of a fair-weather friend, the kind who disappears when things get tough. This is a person who, for nearly 30 years, has consistently and publicly stood guard. He placed himself firmly between a grieving family and the relentless spotlight of the world, without hesitation or prompt. That's why, when whispers emerged that this same man is now speaking out directly, people who have watched this relationship unfold so closely couldn't help but pay intense attention. If you're here for more than just flashy headlines, if you want the real, detailed story behind the drama, then please tap the like button. It really helps this channel reach more people hungry for in-depth perspective like this. Stick with me because what follows is not just speculation or hearsay, it's solid, undeniable fact documented in black and white across a staggering 436-page court judgment.
He is still angry about a story in a newspaper from 20 years ago, and if you upset this prince, he's going to get you. Doesn't matter how long it takes, he's going to come for you. He went for the newspaper, and then he went for the individual journalists, and really went after them in the most vicious way.
This is where the story takes a serious and far-reaching turn. Just 8 days ago, a High Court judge delivered a decisive ruling on Prince Harry's major privacy lawsuit against the publisher of the Mail newspapers. The outcome? Every single one of 97 claims was dismissed, a complete and sweeping rejection, and Harry wasn't standing alone in this legal battle. He had built an impressive coalition of co-claimants, including some surprisingly high-profile names: the courageous Baroness Doreen Lawrence, renowned actress Elizabeth Hurley, Sadie Frost, and, notably, music legends Elton John and David Furnish were all listed together on the same official claim documents. Yet, despite the strength of this group, they lost together, all at once. But losing such a significant case in the British legal system isn't just about the blow to one's reputation or pride. It often means being required to cover not only your own legal expenses, but also those of the opposing side. And in this case, the amount the publisher's legal team has reportedly asked for in combined costs exceeds a staggering £50 million. Furthermore,
first of all, it was an absolute resounding beating. It was thrown out, and the judge was almost annoyed that this had got as far as it had. People were perplexed. When Harry started this, when he went after the Daily Mail, this was for stories a long time ago. Talk about holding a grudge. Talk about not being able to move on. Him and Meghan present themselves as happier than ever, living in Montecito, and here's Harry still fighting battles from decades ago.
sources say the former editor of the newspaper barely concealed his sense of triumph when the judgment was handed down. This brings us to the uncomfortable reality, the behind-the-scenes legal mechanics at play, exactly how these cases unfold, the stakes involved, and what it means for everyone wrapped up in this long, intense saga. Let's peel back the curtain on how this whole complicated setup actually worked in real life, because it's worth slowing down and unpacking this carefully, rather than rushing past to the flashier, more sensational chapters of the story. From the start, several of the co-claimants, among them Baroness Lawrence, were reassured that they wouldn't be personally responsible for covering any legal fees. They were told to step into this without the fear of being hit financially if things went sideways. In fact, it was reported that Elton John and Harry themselves made a point of calming the group, promising that if the case ended badly, they would shoulder the costs personally. It was a vow meant to inspire confidence, an assurance that shielded everyone else from financial risk. But here's where reality hit hard. The legal costs have now landed in full force, and despite whatever image Harry projects publicly, it turns out he doesn't have the kind of liquid cash on hand to soak up those expenses. That leaves only one person in the entire circle with the actual means to cover the bills. Spoiler, it's not Prince Harry, it's Elton John. Now, how did Harry react when the verdict finally dropped? To put it mildly, not well at all. Multiple accounts paint a picture of deep frustration. He walked out of the courtroom and didn't hold back, publicly denouncing the ruling as a complete wipeout. He called it a whitewash, directly attacking the judge who had painstakingly laid out over 400 pages of detailed reasoning behind every pow and a-do's. Conclusion: this was a court, not a game, where senior legal minds had warned Harry long before the trial began that this case faced serious risk of failure under the law. Despite that, he lost about as thoroughly and publicly as one could, and instead of stepping back to accept the outcome, he pointed the finger at the judge for delivering it. Here's the part of the story that I think carries enormous weight, yet barely anyone in the mainstream coverage has spotlighted it with the clarity it deserves, especially when Harry made his fiery public statement blasting the judge. One crucial name was missing entirely from Harry's list of targets: Elton's. The friend who backed the whole legal fight with funding and support stayed noticeably quiet when Harry launched his criticism. Elton did not jump into the fray or attach himself to Harry's public attack on the court. Pause for a moment and let that sink in. That silent absence speaks volumes all on its own. Whatever your take, I encourage you to consider carefully what that detail might suggest. I know what I think, mine, and honestly, I have a feeling you might feel the same once you really take a moment to absorb it. Now, here's the crucial turning point at the very heart of this entire saga, the exact moment where everything that happened before and after pivots on a knife's edge. Sure, losing the legal battle itself was a major blow, but Harry wasn't said to have made that trip to Britain this particular summer merely to accept defeat in court. No. According to multiple sources, he arrived with a very different, very urgent mission. He was actively seeking donations for a cause entirely separate from the legal drama, a cause close to his heart, the Invictus Games, set to take place in Birmingham in 2027. But here's the kicker: the event was reportedly staring down a daunting funding gap of £25 million. Organisers had managed to secure around £4 million beyond an existing government grant, but that was nowhere near enough. This specific trip to the UK was supposedly Harry's chance to rally his wealthiest and most loyal allies to step up and close this massive financial chasm. Yet, despite all those efforts, the money didn't flow. Even more painfully, this included one of the most generous, trusted, and historically supportive connections Harry has ever had in his entire adult life, none other than his own mother's closest friend. Now, here's the detail that really hits like a punch in this entire story. When you carefully align the timeline and see the full sequence laid out clearly, it paints a startling picture. Harry had already drawn Elton John, the legendary singer, into an overwhelmingly costly legal battle, with damages reportedly reaching an eye-watering £50 million. Elton was already responsible for covering a significant share of this financial burden. And knowing all this, Harry reportedly turned around and went back to that same man to ask for even more help, this time to fund the Invictus Games on top of what was already owed. The boldness and, yes, the sheer audacity of this sequence is almost impossible to overstate once you see it laid out in order. Elton reportedly said no, and not just after the judge's official ruling on the Daily Mail case, but firmly before any legal decision had even been announced. He had a clear sense of where this was headed well ahead of most people. People close to Elton have been sharing the now famous phrase he used to sum up his stance: "I am not an ATM." That blunt but powerful line has been echoing across social media and commentary circles ever since. Some commentators have been even more straightforward, describing the whole dynamic as a one-sided financial take, where Harry was seen as expecting endless funding without limits. Yet this response from Elton captured the frustration and boundary setting that many are pointing to as a pivotal moment in this turbulent chapter of Elton. After quietly supporting a variety of causes tied to this family for years, Elton's foundation has now officially shut down its financial backing. But this isn't just about closing an account. Sources close to Elton reveal something far more significant. He's not just stepping back from entertaining any new financial requests, he's seething with frustration. Imagine being pulled into a legal battle you were never meant to be part of, and now that very fight is draining millions from your personal fortune, on top of everything else you've already sacrificed. It's hard to argue he doesn't have every reason to be upset. That anger is more than just emotion. It starkly reveals the massive shift happening behind the scenes. A shift now expressed in hard, unambiguous numbers instead of headlines or sympathetic soundbites. Over recent weeks, Harry's public persona has crumbled under the weight of these facts. Someone who has observed this family's journey for decades described this stretch as Harry's darkest period in 30 years, and that's no exaggeration. Behind the dazzling headlines about Netflix deals, the quietly dissolved Spotify agreement, and a best-selling memoir that flew off shelves by the millions, there's a far less glamorous financial reality simmering just beneath. Harry's personal net worth, the money he truly owns free and clear, apart from any joint business ventures or corporate contracts, is said to hover around a modest $22 million. What's striking is just how much of that fortune traces back to inheritance funds passed down from his late mother's estate, bolstered by his great-grandmother's legacy. In many ways, it's as if both Princess Diana and the late Queen are still providing financial support from beyond their time, quietly keeping Harry afloat even as everything else shifts around him. But that inheritance is far from a bottomless well. The costs are mounting fast. Year after year, expenses like tight security measures costs Harry must cover himself, combined with the mortgage on his sprawling Montecito estate, and the salaries of an entire household staff are bleeding that money at a rapid clip. In 2024 alone, estimates suggest Harry is facing bills exceeding $6 million just to keep things running as usual. Adding to that pressure, he recently lost a court case related specifically to his UK security arrangements, and that defeat left him owing nearly another $1.5 million. This is a man battling not only the public eye but a mounting financial storm that's anything but easy to weather. Just last week, Elton John appeared on a podcast, and the conversation took a surprising turn. He was asked a question as simple as any you might hear in everyday life. So, what do you actually do for a living? You'd expect a quick, clear answer, especially from someone so famous for music and philanthropy. But instead, Elton stumbled through a series of titles: prince, veteran, dad, each word hanging in the air like a placeholder. Then, after several moments of hesitation, he finally settled on Duke, almost as if a noble title could explain his day-to-day role. It was bewildering and, honestly, a little surreal to watch. Nothing about it felt confident or straightforward. Friends around him, those closest to him, seemed to be quietly running their own mental tallies, trying to figure out what the future holds. And in a pattern that's become oddly familiar, they seem to be slipping away, quietly moving toward the exits all at roughly the same time. This act of disappearing from the inner circle without much warning or explanation has now turned into a recognizable cultural reference. People are calling it getting Markled. The trajectory always follows the same arc. You start off as one of their biggest supporters, a visible champion waving the flag proudly, but at some point, something changes, often without any clear reason. Without much fanfare or explanation, you just vanish from the inner circle. You're no longer part of the story. It's happened with some huge names: the Beckhams, Oprah, the Clooneys. These are people once trusted implicitly, their loyalty seemingly unshakable until, almost overnight, it isn't. According to a growing volume of commentary, Elton John appears to be the most emotionally significant, high-profile person yet to realize this pattern firsthand. It's like discovering that a warm friendship has a strict, invisible boundary, one that can't be crossed no matter what. So where does Meghan Markle fit into this ever-thickening drama, especially as it so directly involves her own family? Reports emerging from Montecito suggest she is deeply frustrated, maybe even angry that Prince Harry went ahead with a costly legal case. Watching from thousands of miles away, it's said she witnessed her husband exhaust not only finances but relationships in a matter of weeks. Now, it's tough to verify the accuracy of this claim from the outside. Details like this often get twisted in the retelling. But what's harder to dispute is how quickly Meghan seemed to hold back from fully standing by Harry during what many sources describe as one of the lowest points in his public life. It's been repeatedly called a brutal week, a moment of reckoning you wouldn't wish on anyone. And whatever your perspective, that distance, emotional or otherwise, stands out in this unfolding story. This video is not here to poke fun or dismiss the particular man Harry reportedly turned to for financial help during all this chaos. That man is Elton John, now 78 years old, and facing serious challenges with his eyesight, something he's openly spoken about with remarkable honesty and without a hint of self-pity. Imagine for just a moment the scene unfolding. On one side, an aging, nearly half-blind man quietly navigating the slow decline of his health, a man who has been a steadfast presence for decades. On the other side, the grandson of a queen, arriving at his door, not once but repeatedly asking for another paycheck, on top of an already staggering sum owed. It's more than just a stark picture. It's the very heart of this entire drama, and it frankly casts the person making those requests in a less than flattering light. Now here's the part that I want to really stick with you long after the news cycle moves on, and the rumoured £50 million figure fades into the background. Harry has weathered court battles before, bounced back, and carried on without permanent damage to his public image. But something far more valuable, something far less tangible seems to have been lost this time around, if even some of these reports are accurate. It's the final living connection to unconditional love, to a devoted bond that existed long before any public titles, deals, or marriages. That bond was with Elton John, who, over the past 3 decades, stood by Harry not because of contracts or business, but simply because of who he was, Diana's son. Elton John was, by every account, the last person alive who loved Harry purely and sincerely for being Diana's boy, the child who'd felt the depth of loss from the moment she was gone, the child Elton embraced in moments of private grief. He sang through legendary performances dedicated to her memory, repeatedly putting his own reputation on the line to support Harry in very real ways over 30 continuous years. Now, conversations have surfaced, implying that Harry may have done something irreversible, potentially burning that precious relationship, drawing a vulnerable, elderly man into a needless legal battle and allegedly asking for even more money on the way out, as if walking away without causing that kind of damage wasn't enough. Pause for a second and consider this. How many individual choices, made over so many years by so many people, had to go so off course to lead to this moment? A moment where not only a massive financial dispute explodes publicly, but a once unbreakable personal bond seems to be unraveling in real time. That's the deeper, more complex story beneath the headlines, the unraveling of the last thread connecting Harry back to the genuine love and support his mother once provided him, now fraying in the harsh light of these recent events. Every story, no matter how sprawling or complex, eventually reaches a moment where everything pivots, where quiet decisions ripple into defining chapters that change the course forever. This is exactly that kind of moment. Diana's closest surviving friend, the person who stood by her with unwavering loyalty and kindness, the one genuine constant in that young son's turbulent world, has chosen, almost without fanfare, almost without so much as a public word, to say enough is enough. This isn't a move forced upon him by headlines chasing scandal or by palace insiders maneuvering in shadowy corridors. No, it's not the relentless press, nor the tabloids, those adversaries Harry has often held responsible for years of turmoil, who have brought this about. Instead, it's someone entirely different, a 78-year-old man whose vision is failing, who has quietly decided to close a door that has, until now, swung open since 1997 without pause or hesitation. The same man who lent his voice at Diana's funeral, a symbol of the past's connection to the present, is now stepping back, not eager or willing to remain as an ongoing lifeline to Harry, not prepared to be the person who carries the weight of financial or emotional debt that might have silently piled up over the years. And if even he, a figure so closely bound to Diana's legacy and her family's history, has reached a point where he can no longer or will no longer stand in that role, it triggers a powerful, almost uncomfortable question that naturally follows everything we've carefully unpacked. What now? Where does Harry go from here, especially with the court's ruling clearly not in his favor, legal costs climbing higher with no clear end in sight, and the final meaningful connection to his mother's innermost world, letting go in a quiet, dignified exit? It's a fragile chapter that feels almost like an ending, but it's really just another beginning, a crossroads bristling with uncertainty. And beneath it all lurks a challenge that no one in the sunny streets of Montecito seems ready to voice. If even Elton John, the steadfast, generous friend whose history with this family runs deep, has reached his limit, then who remains? Who is left standing to hold the door open, to offer the kind of support and trust that can truly weather storms like these? This is not just a question about loyalty or friendship. It is a crossroads of legacy, resilience, and future paths. And I want to leave this question with you, because thoughtful, caring minds will see this from many angles. What do you think? Has Elton John finally seen a reflection of something difficult and real in Harry's journey, a moment of clarity that no one else could summon? Or is this simply an honorable man retreating from a complicated battle he never asked to be part of, caught in a messy financial and emotional labyrinth? I'm genuinely curious to hear your thoughts, so please, take a moment to share your honest perspective in the comments below. If this story has moved you, or made you think, please make sure to like this video. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, so you won't miss the next chapter as it unfolds. And most importantly, share this with someone you think will appreciate the depth behind these headlines. Together, we're peeling back the layers, seeking truth and understanding far beyond the surface. I'll see you in the next one.